Okay, let's stay with that story. And as we've been reporting, Rodrigo Duterte has, for the first time, admitted personally killing suspected criminals when he was mayor of the city of Davao. In a speech to businessmen in Manila, he said, "In Davao, I used to do it personally, just to show to the guys, the police, that if I can do it, why can't you?" He went on to say he'd go around Davao with a big bike and would patrol the streets looking for trouble. He said he was really looking for a confrontation so he could kill. Mr. Duterte has shrugged off criticism from human rights groups and President Obama, vowing to continue his nationwide crackdown. Nearly 6,000 people have been killed in anti-drug operations since he came to power in June. Well, the BBC has followed Rafi Lerma, a photojournalist who has documented the nightly killings in the government's war on drugs. Just take a look.
I am for the drug war, but not the killings. Kill drugs, not people.
Yeah, of course, you have to get there quicker, yes. But if they set up a police line and they cordon off the area so you don't get good pictures. Let's go!
The first 2 months was rough, actually. Yeah, I remember some scenes. It felt really bad and feeling guilty about acting like vultures already, covering this drug war. But many of these crime scenes, sometimes it's just a dead body. You don't feel anything.
Look at the...
If you don't document it, then this will just be purely a statistic. Once there's family already, and you hear about these people, these victims, it's heartbreaking when you hear their stories, how angry and how devastated they are. That's when you feel it.
That was photojournalist Rafi Lerma talking to the BBC there. Well, Richard Heydarian, a political scientist based in Manila, joins us now via webcam. Richard, good to see you. You were actually at the event that President Duterte was speaking at. Just tell me what the reaction was to his statement.
Well, actually, there were two events during that day. The first one was an awarding ceremony, and I was there, and I was very carefully observing the president and trying to analyze, his state of mind. And during our ceremony, he actually made a very long speech about war on drugs, and he mentioned that he doesn't take any pleasure in killing people and that he's not a killer. And then the next hour after we left, there's another event there, and in front of the business community, he completely contradicts himself. In fact, this is not the first time that Duterte has somehow said that he may have been personally involved in some sort of a shock and awe approach to dealing with the war on drugs. In fact, during the campaign period, he said the same thing. But the thing that goes for him is this. First of all, the Senate released a report recently essentially absolving the president of any kind of culpability as far as the war on drugs is concerned. The president legally enjoys impunity from prosecution, and also the head of the Philippine Ombudsman Office, Mrs. Morales, also made it clear that what the president says doesn't matter. What matters is an evidence. And so far, it seems that organs of the government and the state believe that there's not enough evidence to implicate the president. My sense with Duterte is that he's beginning to realize that this war on drugs is dragging on too far, that it's getting a little bit out of control, that there's a lot of international pressure. And remember, during the presidential campaign, he promised to suppress the drug proliferation in the Philippines within the first 6 months. And the 6 months is almost over, but clearly the problem is still there. So I think a lot of these controversial statements he's saying is also out of frustration and the fact that he doesn't really know how to clearly move forward without provoking further international backlash. But on one hand, he's optimistic that under a new presidency in the United States, particularly with Donald Trump, the pressure of White House on his administration will decline. And in fact, he had a talk with Donald Trump the other week, just shortly before Trump talked to the Taiwanese president, which was a very controversial thing, whereby Duterte claims that Trump said that he supports his war on drugs. So on one hand, Duterte is optimistic that the U.S. will put less pressure on him under Obama's successor, but on the other hand, he feels pressure that he has to deliver something to the public because he promised to end this in 6 months.
Because the death toll has now reached 6,000 in this drug war. Does he remain popular still at home?
Well, the last survey suggested that he has around 80% popularity, and around 86% of the population actually support his war on drugs. But importantly, 71% of the people in one survey said that they don't want killings. that they want a much more constructive approach to the issue of war on drugs. And that is why the president himself recently has switched his language to focus more on the issue of rehabilitation and a public health focused approach to this issue. 700,000 people have surrendered. You cannot just get rid of them or put them in jail. Rehabilitation is the only way forward. China is already involved in rehabilitation centers by building a huge center here via a Chinese businessman. The Japanese the other day have also offered help to him. I think the next step is for the European Union and the United States to nudge the president away from a scorched earth approach to a much more public health focused approach, because this is honestly the only way that he can deal with the issue of drugs without continuing the shock and awe that we see right now on the streets.
Indeed.
And which is provoking also backlash among the opposition and the international community.
Indeed, as you say, and human rights groups. Richard Heydarian, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your analysis.